everybody. My name is Chris Greco. I'm your host for The Data Show. This is The Data Show, and it is on Roku TV, Pod TV, which is part of Roku TV. Also on my private YouTube channel, which is GrecTech, GrecTech. Just look for the logo that is here, right there. And you'll find my channel, and it'll be there. Same things you're going to see on Pod TV. So what is the data show? What does it have to do with? Well, it has to do with both trying to translate all the studies that are being thrown out there, and at the same time, try to figure out, maybe as a neophyte data person, how all this goes together. Well, how do I get data? What do I do? Where do I start? How do I start this? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to start, basically how to start your own study, and then what types of things you can look for in order to get data. So the first thing you're going to say is, what is the question, right? So that's the first thing. What is the question? And this is very important, because this will set the stage for whatever you're going to do from the standpoint of looking for data or searching for data or doing anything like that. So let's talk about that for a second here. Let's talk about a question that maybe somebody has come up with, that has asked you, or you have come up with, and you're suddenly sitting back saying, hey, is there something here? Is there something that I need to take a look at data and how that all works? So the question we're going to talk about today is basically, is there a relationship, right, between stress and LDL, or low density lipoproteins, which is otherwise commonly called bad cholesterol? And the reason I say that is I have heart disease. I've had it for decades, and I've tried to take a look at different things that cause high LDL. And one of those things that I thought was interesting was stress. And people ask me about that. They go, well, why do you think stress is? And I sit back and I go, well, because when you're put in a fight or flight situation, my understanding is that your endorphins start to pump, adrenaline starts to pump, whatever else is going on. And basically what happens is your heartbeat starts racing, and your blood pressure increases, and all that. And the thing is that people say, well, what's that got to do with LDL? And I'm sitting back going, well, in the olden days, right, when we were all basically fighting for our lives with saber-toothed tigers or whatever it was, is that and this is my understanding of this. Okay, so I'm not a doctor, so I'm just telling you this. Is that basically my understanding is that when you are in that state of fight or flight, that your blood, basically you're increasing the amount of plaque in your blood. Now the reason is, again, because if the saber-toothed tiger takes your arm, that you have the ability to stop the bleeding, and plaque will do that. Plaque will actually stop bleeding. In fact, it's not good for you, but that's all part of the stress aspect. So that's my take on it. So I thought, well, then that means that LDL cholesterol with stress will increase. The more stress you're under, the more LDL is going to increase. So I thought, well, I'll take a look at that. So in other words, I'm going to change this into a hypothesis. I'm going to say there is a relationship between stress and LDL cholesterol. Whoop. So I mean that is, sorry, I put a question mark, and in actuality there is no question mark after that, because it's a hypothesis. There is a relationship between stress and LDL. So what's the first thing I'm going to do? Well, first of all, I have to find data. I have to sit back and I go, okay, I got to find data. So I have to find the data. Where do I find the data? So I mean, where do I find it? It's not so much how do I look for it, but where do I find the data? So let me show you some of the things where I take a look at. First of all, I just went to your favorite search engine and I put LDL cholesterol and stress. That's it. No relationship, no, anything, just this, that. And this is what I got. LDL, lower levels. Can stress raise LDL cholesterol levels? And then it says, a study conducted by the University College London researchers found that individuals with large initial stress responses had substantially greater rises in cholesterol. Now, that may not be exactly what I want, but let's go to it and let's see what types of things they have. So this is what we're talking about here. I mean, we're talking about the ability for what exactly are we saying here? So if you have if you have a day where you feel like you're at the end of your tether, don't worry about that. So this is media. This is media stuff, and how stress affects your heart. So basically, it talks about the different aspects and what's going on and everything else. And then it's the idea that when you're feeling strained, here we go. When you're feeling strained, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol, hormones that rev up your heart, sharpen your brain, and help you deal with problems. A little stress may be good, but a lot, of course, doesn't do that. So this is what they're talking about when they talk about these areas. Now they did talk about an aspect about London, College of London, and I was just trying to find that here, and unfortunately here they just don't. So they don't have anything else here. Other effects of the heart. So it doesn't quite give you what I thought was an actual reference to a study. So I go back and I go, well, that one wasn't really helpful. So I'm going to go back and say better ways to lower cholesterol. So this is this was really a good idea, but unfortunately, I don't see anything that's having to do with that. And I go back just one more time, and I still don't see it. So you may have better luck with this than I do, but right now I'm just not really happy with this. So I'm going to go to another area. Now you could say, you could change this and say relationship between stress and LDL cholesterol, right? Now that might be a little bit better search term, and we'll see what goes on there. But how does stress affect cholesterol? And it talks about different aspects. So there's a lot of different everyday health. These are basically doctors' aspects. Does stress raise LDL? There we go. This is interesting. And so this is Healthy Cholesterol Club, blah, 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 stress and cholesterol. What impact does stress have? So this is, again, 2019. And I still don't see anything having to do with, the idea behind this. They're just talking about, here we go, 2013 study looked at of 91,593 people found a positive correlation between those who experienced job sweat and unhealthful cholesterol levels. So also found, here we go, higher levels of triglycerides and low density lipoproteins. So let's talk about that. So let's go to that referral study. So this is 2017. What are the effects of psychological stress and physical work on blood lipid profiles? So now we have something, and I like this. This is from National Institute of Health.gov. So it's a .gov website, which I've told you this before. I trust this. I trust data from the government. A lot of people do not. But you have to understand, I was part of the government for, including military, about 35 years. So I felt that the stuff that I did, the things that I did, the studies I ran, all these different data aspects were, in my view, as verifiable as possible. So I tried to make the data as truthful as I could, as accurate as I could. So I trust the data people in the government, much as I realize, and I understand why people don't. I get that, but I do. So I put up a lot of this stuff. So It says the objective of this study was to determine the effects of psychological physical stress on lipid profiles. So they talk about different aspects and probability and different things. And these are relative risks aspects. 1.57. One means that it's the risk is about the same. So so these are actually these are interesting aspects. And then it goes on to the introduction, what happened. Hypercholesteremia is high cholesterol. I know it's a medical term, and I know it can be confusing, but that's basically what we're talking about. Psychological stress is human body, some specific organs, whatever else. So it talks about different aspects. Now, remember, this is 2017, so this is a 5-year-old study. And my thing was that when I talk about stress aspects, I was in the military, so a lot of things had to do with PTSD. So my next thing is there something having to do with PTSD and LDL cholesterol? Because, stress, PTS, the S stands for stress. So I'm wondering if the PTSD aspect would in fact lend itself to more people suffering from heart disease because of post-traumatic stress disorder. So anyways, this is good, materials and methods. It talks about all the different aspects. And, simple sampling method, good, at alpha 0.05, power of 90. This is really important. Basically, the statistical power of 90 this is really good. A power of 90 is actually very good. Power of 80 is supposedly standard. So this is good job. So they did 5 groups, 1,000 for each groups, and so 5,000 total. So that is really good. The thing is that age aspects and everything else you have to take into consideration. What that situation is. Divided in 3 groups or 5 groups, and then talks about means of risk factors. So there's all your risk factors there. So I mean, this is actually, a good study. 5,000 people, really good study. So this is triglycerides. This is triglycerides, LDL, and LDL. Anything above 100, anything above 70 is considered to be risk for an individual with heart disease. So these people that any trace of heart disease, the LDL is really important. So I mean, you can see that they had 5 groups, and the group 5, we're talking about the mean plus or minus the standard deviation. So your standard deviation is plus 20, plus 0.28 here, which again, this is, if they didn't have heart disease, these are actually not bad. But anything above 120, I would say, anything above 100 actually should be taken a look at from a cardiologist. That's my conjecture. That's my opinion. So that's what we have here. So these are, frequency of risk factors. Again, 1 is a low risk factor, and anything above 1 could be considered to be a high risk factor. So that's what we're talking about. So these are all the relative risks of lipid disorders. These are really good study. Now, somebody might say, well, of course, that's real nice, but is this the only study you got? Well, to tell the truth, this is the only study I got through the relationship aspect, right? But there's some other ones. Is there a link between stress and high cholesterol? WebMD. Does stress affect your cholesterol? Can stress raise LDL cholesterol levels? Study, and so there's a lot of different areas. And again, this is the same one we just went through, and there's nothing there that talks about College of London, but who knows? How does stress affect cholesterol? LDL cholesterol information. So there's a lot of things that are there. Now, what I did was I joined a thing called JSTOR, and JSTOR is like a journal. It's this JSTOR. It's a journal storage articles, and you're free. It's free to join. You register. It's free. If you belong to let's say you're taking a graduate course, you can actually get through the library and just see a lot of different studies. This JSTOR actually does interesting aspect because I can take a look at stress and LDL cholesterol and I get 1,159 results. Now these are journal articles, and some of them, you sit back and go, phenofibrate on cardiovascular outcomes and statin users with metabolic syndrome propensity matched cohorts. Sorry, there's stuff like interaction of heat shock protein, dyslipidemia and cardiovascular risk, association, all this stuff. I'm taking a look saying, I just don't, clinical implications, that's real nice. But here, this one right here, the relationship between job stress and dyslipidemia. So, so this was an interesting one. So I just took a look at it real quick, and you just basically click on it, and it shows you the journal article. Now you can't read, unfortunately, because this is not. I do not have. This is a preview, and that's basically what it is. You can see the preview, but that's basically all that's going to be allowed. That's basically all you're going to be allowed to see. But the nice thing about it is it gives you an abstract, which is good. And if you read the abstract, chances are it's going to be interesting enough that it will give you what the study was about. Between job stress, lipid profile, and dyslipidemia diagnosis. So questionnaire, used a questionnaire right there. When you talk about questionnaires and surveys, things like that, you can have what they call respondent bias, which means that people are going to respond maybe the way they think you want them to respond. So you have to really be careful about how you word the questions, the audience, all the things have to go along with that. So this is basically, and then they give you a slight introduction. Job stress can increase cardiovascular risk via several mechanisms. Job stress can indirectly increase cardiovascular risk by favoring unhealthy habits such as smoking, unhealthy diet, all the other things. Finally, job stress can be related to changes in the coagulation system. So again, by nutrition aspects, that type of thing. So these are the things, and the nice thing about it is they do refer to studies, but you'd have to get the entire study here to get this. Scandinavian Journal of Public Health. Right there, you sit back and you go, if they only did Scandinavia, that could be an issue because, Scandinavia has different diets, it's got different lifestyles, it's got different aspects than the United States. It just does. So those things are very important to bring into any type of studies that you have. Okay. So these are the different things that you can take a look at from the standpoint of finding data. And now you can, the interesting thing about it, and I've showed you this before, but you can go to data.gov, and this is really, actually really interesting. Data.gov has a ton of open data that U.S. government has. So you could put in LDL cholesterol, and stress. See what you come up with. Maybe it's nothing, right? So in this case, nope, nothing. So you have to sit back and go, well, okay, what about just LDL cholesterol, and see what comes up with that. Or better yet, let's go do PTSD and cholesterol. Let's make it very general. Let's see if anything comes up as a result of that. So there is some. So here's some medication for PTSD. This is mainly about PTSD, but you can take peripheral metabolic effects of ozone exposure in healthy and diabetic rats and normal and high cholesterol diet. PTSD repository, outcomes with each treatment arm. So there's a lot of things you can take a look at from the standpoint of, what's been happening here. So these are, these you can sit back and you can take a look at. Now, remember, there's how many? There's 86 data sets. So you have 86 data sets to take a look at. And you can put different tags, you put different formats, organizational types. There's 80 total from the federal government. I like this one where it actually says the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I kind of like that. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to let it just be the VA, because sometimes the VA really has a good study program, and they take a look at that, especially when it talks about PTSD. So you can take a look at different aspects and who's been studied. Now, once this is all done and you get through that, you can also go, and this is actually a good one, is clinicalstudies.gov. And clinical studies got, well, okay, let's try it again here. clinicalstudies.gov. We're just going to see it that way. Okay. So let's clinicaltrials.gov. I had it. Okay. So that was clinical trials one. Okay. So this is clinicaltrials.gov. Now in this, according to the US government, every trial should be able to must go into this system. So any clinical trials that are being done are put in here under the National Library of Medicine, which is National Institute of Health. So this gives you every one. So let's take a look at this. So condition or disease. We're going to do heart disease, and there's a lot of different things here. Heart disease, and we'll put down other terms, PTSD, and LDL cholesterol. And we're just going to do a search on that. We're going to see if anything comes up. So there's two of them: myocardial infarction, stress prevention intervention, and then EMDR treatment and PTSD following cardiac events. So they're recruiting at this point in time. So basically, cardiac events can often result in debilitating and persistent psychological symptoms. Key question involves whether optimal treatment of cardiac-induced post-traumatic stress disorder reduces PTSD symptoms and therefore may offset the risk of recurrent or worsening cardiovascular disease. So this is what they're talking about. So that's how they do it. Now, estimated enrolled 60 participants, randomized. Interesting, they call it randomized, but really it's only those people that are going to seek out this study. So that's so and the PTSD in this case was caused by a cardiovascular event. As far as we know. Now, what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll just go back and we'll clear it out, and we'll just go back and ask some more things. So let's see, we'll go back to search again, modify search. So you can see there's a lot of different ways you can make this thing work for you, So let's go into hypercholesteremia. There we go. PTSD, LDL cholesterol. We'll just see if anything's happening here. Okay, nothing. So let's just do PTSD and hypercholesteremia. And we'll do that one. See if there's anything on that. One study, pediatric reporting of adult onset genomic relationships. Okay, so that's if if a child has the same type of has a genetic predisposition towards hypercholesteremia. So that's, so just to let you know, you can do a lot of different things with this and see if there's something there that you can have, that you can take a look at. Now, interestingly enough, sometimes what I do is I put CDC in here, and I put LDL cholesterol. So I'll just put cdc.gov and see if there's anything in here. Sometimes they have studies, they have things. Here they have low density lipoprotein, risk factors, cholesterol education, cholesterol lowering medication, cholesterol. So there's a lot of things that they have sometimes that they bring up, and it talks about that performance on beta quantification reference, blogs. So cdc.gov has a lot of things that are really interesting, and they can in fact help you to be able to get the data that you need to be able to make it. Now, once you have the data, once you get the data, then what do you do with it? Well, we'll cover that in the next show. We'll actually get data, based on a question. And then we'll take that data and we'll analyze, we'll take a look at it. Sometimes just numerical analysis is fine and it works. And the question we're going to have, the question we're going to use is going to be, you know, it has the migration from Russia increased within the last 10 years? And that's basically going to be the question. Has the migration from Russia increased within the last 10 years or in the last 10 years? And our hypothesis is going to be migration from Russia has increased in the past 10 years. Now, this has, you know, now past 10 years somewhat has to do with the, you know, Russia-Ukrainian situation, but maybe has it, were people migrating, were they leaving Russia before that? So what we'll do is we'll go out, we'll try to find the data. And I mean, you know, we'll just talk about that for a second here. How would you find the data, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take and you know, take a look at this and see what we can find right now. So migration from Russia, and we'll just put that in there. So this is globalist. What you want is, you want to find out where the Russia is, you know, where the situation is. Now they do have different aspects, you know, migration from Russia, world mapper, Russian immigration. So they have a lot of things here that talk about that. So what I do is, I try to get, instead of data that people have, what I try to do is I go to the source of that data. Now, Statista.com does have data, and if you are a member of Statista, you can see that data, and you can also get the actual source of that data. That's where you want to go, is the source of that data, and we'll show you. I'll show you how to do that on the next time. So that's basically it. What you need to do is you need to have a question. So remember, what is the question? Then you find the data to answer that question. You find the data to answer that question. You don't try to find the data that will give you your answer. You try to find the data that will help address the question. I think that's very, very important. It's something that's the difference between trying to find data that somehow or other you're going to sit back and say, okay, this is now proves my point. That's not what you want. What you want is to sit back and say, does this verify my hypothesis or not? And that's where you go to. So that does it for me for today, for the data show. The next time, what I said we'll do is we'll actually find data to have our question about migration from Russia, and then we will take that data and we will see what we have to do to basically what they call clean the data. We have to sit back and say, what is it that we want from this data, and how do we make it so that we can analyze it? The very, very important part of it is, what do we do so that we can analyze it? So until next time, thank you for watching, and please, you know, ask questions and check your data absolutely every time. Have a great day.